I can tell you a little bit as I go along about what's in them. But again, so this is the Cook County Jail. We are the single biggest site jail in the nation. LA County has more jails and more people. New York has more jails and more people. But we're on 96 acres. Many of you know where we're at, around 26 in California. We have 8 divisions, including a hospital that's staffed full-time. And again, we primarily hold pretrial detainees, people who are waiting for their cases to be adjudicated. On any given day of late, our average daily population is about 8,200, and all but about 500 or 600 of them are pretrial. And we have another 2,300 detainees who are in the community on electronic monitoring that are supervised by the sheriff. Last year, during 2015, a full 52,000 people were discharged from our jail who spent at least one night with us. That's a pretty amazing number. Okay, we should always practice with equipment. Lesson learned. There we go. What are they in on? So a lot of people think, you know, jail, pretty scary place, all sorts of really dangerous people. And if you look at these numbers, excuse me, and this was a snapshot of a daily population we took back in September. Looking at the charges, really less than half are in for very serious violent crimes, what you might expect. More than half are in for far less serious offenses, ranging from simple drug possession to retail theft to failure to register. One of the things we missed in my not being able to show you the video was a young woman in her late 20s telling the story of how she had been arrested on retail theft. She had already been on probation for retail theft, did it again. She said she was stealing to be able to buy a car seat for her soon-to-be-born baby. She was 9 months pregnant. In her words, the judge was clearly mad at her for violating the terms of her probation, locked her up on a $150,000 bond, which meant, excuse me, to walk before her case could be adjudicated, she would have had to post $15,000 in cash. If she'd had $15,000, she said she wouldn't have been stealing to get money to buy a car seat for her baby. While she was in our custody, she gave birth. Always kind of a sad thing. She did so at Sturger Hospital, was able to spend about 4 days with her infant, then came back to the jail, where she spent another 6 to 8 weeks before her case was resolved and she got probation again. You'll also notice that if you add up these numbers, and I'm not a number person, but you'll see that we're missing data on about another 12% of the population, and that's just because of the way Cook County systems work, and the Sheriff's Office probably has the best system, but unless charges are put in on intake, we have a hard time tracking them. We can pick them up later. So let's take a closer look at the 52,000 released in 2015. You know, the racial disparities are still incredibly profound. 66% were African American, 18% Hispanic, the rest white and Asian. Also, 92% were male. Our population is overwhelmingly male. On any given day, we've got about 500-600 females in the thousands. The average age was 33, and a figure I found really disturbing, 15% of our detainees were younger than 21. So let's talk about crimes of survival. Clarence Darrow did, so we'll stick with that theme. And the sheriff talks about crimes of survival all the time, and what he means by that is crimes people commit because they don't have money or because it's the only way they can survive. So retail theft, a lot of the detainees tell us they steal to support their drug habits. On February 26, 16% of our population that day, about 1,200 people, were in on a lead drug charge. We also know that some people steal because they're hungry. There was a 30-year-old woman who spent 221 days in jail on minor charges because she stole 2 plums, 3 chocolate bars from a Save-A-Lot. She was pregnant and hungry. 221 days. There was a 51-year-old shoplifter who spent 10 months in our jail awaiting trial because he stole toothpaste. So a little more on crimes of survival, criminal trespass. The homeless have no place to go. So they get arrested for, seeking shelter in a coffee shop or a restaurant or even a police station. Another man you would have met in the video is J.M. He's in his 50s, and I believe when we made the video in the fall, that was his 109th arrest. During the previous 15 years, he has spent, if you string together all the time, 12 full years in our custody, 12 out of the last 15 years. Always arrested for criminal trespass. He's homeless, he has a drinking problem, so he comes and goes. He's never gone to the Department of Corrections. So that also sort of underscores he's not really much of a threat to any of us, right? Excuse me. Another gentleman who was in our custody, I'll call him Kenneth, he's a 53-year-old double amputee confined to a wheelchair. Both of his feet were amputated due to frostbite during his time on the street while he was homeless. And he recently spent 414 days in our custody. He first was arrested for allegedly trying to steal a cart of groceries, which is pretty ambitious on his part because he's in a wheelchair, right? He came into the jail, he was given out on bond on that charge, judge gave him an I bond, went back out on the street and was drinking a can of beer and allegedly annoying some passersby, so police were called. Well, police had a problem when they arrested him. They couldn't fit the wheelchair in the squad roll. So they commandeered a CTA bus, put him on a CTA bus to take him to the police station. This man that was so dangerous that he had to be arrested, taken to the police station on a CTA, came into our custody, was in our custody for 414 days before he was considered, his case was called, he got time served. And so the cost to taxpayers, to people like you and I, $59,000 to keep him locked up before he was released with time served. Also, while he was with us, I apologize, I'm getting over bronchitis and the voice is going to come and go. While he was with us, he lost his Social Security disability income because that's what happens when you're locked up in jail. So here's some numbers on our homeless population. Of those 15,000 releases, that's how many people you see were homeless. This is self-reporting on intake. People are asked if they're homeless. We consider this a super underestimate of who is homeless. A lot of people are afraid that if a judge hears that they're homeless, they'll have an even less chance of getting out. So let's talk about the poor. The average bond amount for those people in our custody is $800,000. We don't like to talk about averages, though, because we have so many outliers, right? You have someone with a $2 million bond and someone with a $500,000 bond. So we took a closer look at people in on very low-level offenses who, how much money they needed to get out of the jail. And 20% of the detainees that day needed $5,000 or less to be free. And remember, not only are people in the jail, they've lost their freedom, but during their time locked up, they almost certainly will lose their housing, their jobs, their children. So it's not a good thing. Another thing we take a look at is what happens to people in our custody when they're released. And the thing to me that's really important about this slide is you see that 20% go on to be sentenced to prison. That's a pretty small amount. Now that's sort of an underestimate because we know that the 30% who bond out, some amount of them will also go on to the penitentiary, but the rest of these folks are going back to their neighborhoods and they're going back worse off than when they came in. I'm going to talk about something called turnarounds. And this is totally crazy. In case you thought anything that you saw so far is sane, this is completely nuts. 10% of the people that we sent to prison last year, or just over 1,000 of them, were turnarounds. And what that means is they were in jail, pre-trial, in custody for so long, that by the time their cases were resolved, and we drove them by bus down to prison, they dressed in and dressed out on the same day. So together they spent 222 years in custody in excess of the sentences that they were given. Cost to taxpayers, $11.6 million. I mean, that's insane. Here's an example. Young guy named JPA, he was 20 years old. He got arrested for retail theft for stealing 3 bottles of vodka from a Walgreens. Total value, $35. Because he had a prior retail theft, he was charged with a felony, right? If you have one misdemeanor retail theft, you get another one, all of a sudden you're accused felon. And because he was out on probation, the judge would not set bond for him. So he spent 235 days in our custody, found guilty, sentenced to 1 year IDOC, state prison, right? He got credit for his time in custody, and because at state prison you get day for day good time, you do all the math. So he actually served 52 days locked up that counted for nothing, absolutely nothing. Cost to taxpayers for that, $8,000. And you know, it's like, again, we're not doing these people any good, and it's not like JBA, you know, we like give him a gift card with, you know, time credits, so if he comes in again, he can, you know, get it back somewhere. So justice delayed, justice denied, and I would say this is one of our biggest frustrations when we're at the jail and we meet people, and it's always their cases are dragging on and on and on. So last year, Sheriff Darrow championed something called the Accelerated Resolution Court. We like to call it the Rocket Docket, and what it means is people accused of retail theft or criminal trespass, if their cases are not resolved within 30 days of being assigned to a judge, they then become eligible for release pre-trial, right? They still have to go to court, but they can be released either on an I-bond or on electronic monitoring. So far, since the new law has gone into effect, we've referred in the sheriff's office, we do the referrals to the court to move these things along. Annie, again, my colleague here, is driving this bus. Of the 64 we've referred, 42 have been released, and another 22 still remain in our custody. This year, we're trying to expand this legislation so it would include people on low-level drug charges, as well as some driving offenses that don't include DUI or any kind of driving offense that caused bodily harm. And this is a pilot program right now. We're also seeking to extend the pilot to 2019. So I need to mention that I'm a former journalist. I like to refer to myself as a recovering journalist. But one of the first big topics I wrote about decades ago, back in the 80s, was how the mentally ill were landing in our prisons and jails, and nothing's changed. We see the mentally ill all the time. The sheriff has been a huge champion of talking about this issue nationally. Cook County Jail is in fact the largest de facto mental hospital in the state, if not in the country. And the thing that's really sad about this is when the mentally ill come into our custody, because of their illness, they might do things in the jail, spit on someone, push someone, end up picking up a new charge for it. Something that would not happen if it were in a therapeutic setting, right? But because it's a correctional setting, if they act out in that way through no fault of their own, but because of their illness, they pick up additional charges. And we oftentimes see their original charge that they're in unresolved, but then they're still sitting in jail because these new charges have come up. So we see this all the excuse me. We see this all the time. In particular, that the mentally ill have trouble getting medication. There was another film clip about our mentally ill population. In particular, since 6 of 12 city clinics were closed a couple of years back, people have nowhere to go for their medication, or might have to ride a couple of buses. They can't do that. They self-medicate through drugs and alcohol. They commit crimes of survival to support their addiction. They get arrested, they get charged, they come and they go. Again, remember the guy that I told you about in the other video that you also didn't get to see. I can send links to anybody who wants to see the videos. Just hit me up afterward. I was going to refer to the guy in the video who...
I apologize.
Do we have the videos?
Only because if you could give me the link, we will get it up. Do you have the links offhand? Any chance? No.
No.
Okay.
They're back at the beginning of that.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I
No,
apologize.
that's okay. So we have this revolving door of the mentally ill, where traditionally when they would leave the jail, they'd leave without medication, without all sorts of things. And one barrier that we have at the jail to effective discharge planning is we don't really know when people are going home, right? The state prison system, someone comes in with a sentence, I know you're getting out in a year. At the jail, we don't know if you might be able to make bond in a day or two. You might go to your next court date and be discharged. So that's one of the tricky things we try to navigate, but we're trying to do better on that. Detainees who now leave our jail, particularly the mentally ill, will leave with prescriptions for their medication and instructions on how to get it. A big program we started a couple of years back is when people come into the jail, we enroll them on Medicaid if they don't already have it. And they're given coats, bus passes, and I'm happy to report, again, because Sheriff Dart is very clear that we bring compassion to work with us every day. If somebody needs a ride somewhere, our deputies give them the ride to get them there. When Kenneth, the double amputee that I was talking about, was being released from the jail, we wanted to drive him. He had no home to go to, remember, he was homeless, but he had a place that he frequented, and we offered to drive him there. But as is sometimes the case, people don't want much to do with the jail once it's Freedom Day time, and it's like, no, I'm good, I'll get there on my own. They'll also leave with printouts of social service agencies in their communities that can help them locate housing or help them with food. And if they've taken advantage of some of our job readiness programs in the jail, hopefully that can set them up to find employment, which, as you've heard from other speakers today, is sort of at the root of it all. We've got it. Let's do it at the end, okay? Thank you. So a couple of years back, sort of mindful of the fact that we are now a mental health hospital, On any given day, people coming to the jail, as many as a third of them will report that they had mental health problems out in the community. So a couple of years back, Sheriff Darrow said, well, we're just going to have to become a part of a mental hospital. He started the Office of Mental Health Policy and Advocacy, and that means a bunch of things, but mainly what it means is everyone who comes into our custody, even before bond court, is given a mental health screening. That's where a third of them will say, I've had some sort of issue in my life. If those people come back from bond court and actually come into our custody because they're entering the jail, all of them are given full mental health assessments. I mentioned we have, on any given day, 8,200 people. 20% of our population daily, so a little better than 1,600, is being treated for a mental illness. Now that ranges everything from very mild, just requiring some medication a couple of times a day, to on any given day we've got 75, 80 people who are in our acute psych ward being given, pretty amazing treatment. One of the other sad things that we've learned is in terms of our mentally ill population, if you're mentally ill and if you're being referred for fitness hearings and the like, this will lengthen your time of stay with us by a factor of 2. So you will spend twice as much time locked up just because you're mentally ill. The sheriff also established a mental health hotline that we man 24/7. This is not only for detainees leaving our custody, but also for families of inmates, really anybody who happens across the number. It's on our website. If they need help and referrals, we have people there to help them. So on the grounds of the former Cook County Jail boot camp, and this is across from the main campus on Rockwell, the sheriff established the Mental Health Transition Center. This happened in August 2014. It's a place where people from around the country and even around the world, we recently had visitors from Scotland come to see how we handle our mental health population. But this program is designed to provide comprehensive mental health treatment, job readiness, family support, and discharge planning for the mentally ill. And I want to tell you a little bit, so when the guys finish this program, and right now this program is open to males, we have a different program for females called the Women's Justice Program. When they finish this, they have a graduation ceremony and they wear caps and gowns, walk across the stage. Their family is there, this jail staff is there, other people from the community, and they're wearing caps and gowns, and they walk across the stage and are applauded. And it's clear that for many of these guys, it's the first time in their life they've been recognized for anything. It's amazing. So finally, learning employable skills. This is the Cook County Jail Garden. It's really an amazing place during the summer. Inmates work in the garden. They grow produce that's sold to restaurants and are also available at the Daily Center Farmers Market. We have a chef, Chef Bruno, who comes in a couple of times a week to teach inmates culinary skills. There's photography classes, art classes. Guys under 21 and ladies under 21 can go to public school, and we have GED programs. So, and some religious programming. Mary Mitchell's got a great column today on the Malachi Dads program, which operates at the jail. So we try to do, again, at the sheriff's urging, while these people are in our custody, what can we do to not harm them further, to give them something else? So we're doing what we can. There's still lots more that we want to do. And now I think we can show you the videos. Great.